Notorious for their high crime rates and corrupt government, Mexico has many missing person reports that go ignored and uninvestigated. Their government system lacking the proper resources for an efficient investigative system is said to cause their inaction towards uncovering the mass amounts of undug bodies throughout the country. According to an article from Vice News, there are programs that exist, such as VITA, where families who have loved ones that are missing are tired of government inaction and search for signs of buried bodies themselves without formal training. Programs like VITA are currently operating due to Mexican citizens' frustration when not receiving the help they need from their political system. This led me to question the various responses that Mexican citizens have when their missing loved ones do not receive any attention from local authority, and how their limited amount of forensic scientists believe the public should respond. When conducting my research on this topic, I found that missing persons rates in Mexico are higher than ever. Due to drug wars and corruption in the government, the amount of missing persons in Mexico has grown incredibly over the last 10 years. The most well-known way for citizens to protest the lack of attention that mass graves receive from their government is when citizens come together and take the problem into their own hands by finding mass graves that could potentially contain missing loved ones without government professional assistance. Their involvement in these investigations are a form of resistance against the social norms of Mexican politics that tend to leave families in suspended grief, where they are unable to receive closure from the disappearance of their loved ones. The relationship between both mourners and forensic scientists within Mexico is tense. The participation of these grieving families is seen as a liability and potentially dangerous to professional forensic scientists in Mexico. It is argued that their search could result in the damage of evidence due to their lack of training and experience within forensics. When looking at Mexican citizens' options after finding out that their loved ones are missing, it can be seen that every option has its pros and cons. First off, they can choose to go to the local authorities. The negatives of this first option is the amount of complicated paperwork and how long and difficult the process is of getting professional help. Oftentimes, citizens are not able to go through with the whole process because it is too complex. Other times, even when the paperwork is filed, these reports go ignored and uninvestigated. However, if you end up being one of the rare cases they spend time on, you receive professional help and there is more of a chance of finding your loved one. The second option would be citizens taking matters into their own hands and attempting to find their loved ones independently, without any professional help. The negatives of this option is that there is a possibility of damaging any evidence you find, due to the lack of training in forensics. Also, the chances of actually finding your loved one is incredibly slim. Most importantly, doing this is an incredibly short-term solution. While citizens who do this are taking immediate action, it is not necessarily helping or attempting to change this long-term problem of local authorities not investigating missing persons reports. The positive of trying to find them yourself is that it is a type of resistance against the government in their inaction. With this situation, the two most common options give off an us versus them mentality. You are either with the government or against them. You either participate in the existing system or you completely ignore the system. As I was conducting my research, I happened across a third option. In an article by science journalist Lizzie Wade, she talks about a group called the Mexican Forensic Anthropology Team. The Mexican Anthropology Team is an organization in Mexico made up of professional anthropologists. They provide classes to Mexican citizens with instruction on how to effectively complete the appropriate steps on filing a missing persons report, and also teaches them the fundamentals of finding evidence without professional help. While they do not support citizens endangering themselves by looking for their loved ones, they provide general information on how to find the location, not damage evidence, and call authorities to get their attention. I had the pleasure of being able to conduct an interview with the Science Magazine journalist who investigated and wrote this article, Lizzie Wade. In our conversation, she explained to me how she believes that this Mexican anthropology team is working towards change in Mexico on a larger scale. In our interview, she stated,
this isn't really about these individual cases even. This is about changing the way that Mexican citizens interact with the government and law enforcement. This is about teaching people what their rights are, that sort of larger social push as well to empower victims and just sort of change the way that they talk to the state and change the way that the state has to respond to them. I think is such a hard and grueling and long change to try to bring about, but I think that's the change that's really going to matter. It's like you can't just solve a couple of cases. You really this change has to come from very deep within Mexico.
After talking to Lizzie Wade, I believe that having more programs like the Mexican Anthropology Team ensures action on both ends and allows both citizens and the government to participate in the investigation together. The greatest change comes from learning and fighting for what you believe in. For these citizens to fight for their rights through education and strive to change their perspective on their government is an amazing goal. Instead of trying to go against or around the current government system, fighting to work with the government is a long-term solution that will benefit everyone. Lizzie Wade opened my eyes to a new possibility of citizens, government institutions, and professional anthropologists coming together to decrease the overall number of missing persons within Mexico.